When it comes to Star Trek, where there's a will, there's a way. Here's your look at new Playmates toys, Star Trek The Next Generation, Commander William Riker. Born on the planet Earth in the city of Valdez, Alaska, adventurous spirit with a charming demeanor, likes to socialize, comfortable with command situations, though persistent in wanting to expand beyond his limitations, enjoys playing games of skill and strategies, such as 3D chess. He is especially fond of poker, a competent negotiator and statesman, though he prefers a course of action. Before we see what's new with William T, let's first figure out how tall the figure stands. While I'm doing this as well, I'd like to thank the folks over at Playmates Toys that did provide this sample of the Next Generation Commander William Riker that we could have a look at in this video. All these Star Trek figures should now start trickling through, whether it's going by warp speed or if it's only on impulse engines. They should still start now hitting store shelves if you guys are interested to pick them up for yourself. Anyways, though, back to the figure. William Riker stands about 4.25 inches, because 4.5 is up here, right? So I would only say about 4.5 inches in height. And that works out to be a figure that's a little over 10 centimeters tall. Comparing a captain to a commander, we're going to slide over Commander Riker and bring in the Captain Picard we looked at earlier. I will say one thing, when comparing the two figures, it does seem like maybe Captain Picard is maybe just a little too tall. I mean, granted, he did have a little longer of a head, but I think Riker should be probably just a little bit taller. At least one thing that's good about Commander Riker is he's using a brand new body, as he's a little wider in the shoulders and the torso to his dear captain. And once again, because I do have the original figure for this, we're going to bring in the packaging that comes included with the new Star Trek The Next Generation Commander William Riker and compare it along with the original packaging, or the original release. Slightly different, though, in Riker is that the newer Riker has the high collar for the later seasoned episodes, where the one here we're comparing for this comparison actually has Riker in his first season outfit that still has the stripes of that burgundy in his shoulders and without the collar, sans le collar. One thing also that you'll notice once again is that they have carried over the same artwork that was on the original carded packaging, and they brought that also over to the newer figure. I love the idea that they've continued that trend. And once again, flip the figure around. One thing I did actually do differently this time around for Commander Riker that I didn't do for Captain Picard is on the back. Now, first of all, you can see that both of them, actually even the way they've designed the back of the card looks very identical, other than the fact that the original Next Generation card would have had a lot more cast of characters. But one thing also with this card is even though it's Commander Riker, it still says his name and still says his species being human. Unfortunately, the read-up down below is the same one. It's generic to the ones I'm assuming with all of the Star Trek figures. Captain Picard had the same read-up. Commander Riker had the same read-up. So what I decided to do differently when it came to the opener of this review, I ended up reading the file card that came included with the original Playmates toys. I thought that would be fun. Now, granted, again, this is from 1993 that these figures would have come around, but at least these ones, unlike the newer ones, actually had read-ups specific to the characters. And like that vintage figure from the 90s, Riker comes included with all the same accessories. For which, I guess one thing that is different, though, is the display stand that comes included with this figure. The original carded one, which again we can bring back in, it's a little harder to actually make it out, but the display stand is right down below here, but you'll know right away, it's the comm badge from the Next Generation. Gone, unfortunately, when it comes to these display stands, the oval backing to it. That gold backing is completely gone here. It seems like they are using just generic display stands, which again, I'm okay with. The peg, though, is a little bit too far back on the stand. Kind of wish it was actually a little bit more dead-centered, just because when you are taking the figure and you put him down, first of all, the hole isn't in his heel. It's a little bit further up from that. And when you attach it, you'll notice that his feet do overlap it. You always kind of have to have the feet a little bit closer together. That's providing, again, you want to have them right onto the display stand. You don't even have to really attach them onto the peg. You can have them just balancing that way. But then you'll notice right away, there's that peg. Again, it's all done here in gray plastic. Same exact one that we had a look at when it came to Captain Picard. We're going to go ahead and move that out of the way. The next thing that he comes included with, like the original release, is the Away Team Field Kit. The Field Kit looks like simply just a case, a suitcase, but once you open it up, you get your finger actually in there. Once you open it up, you can see all this nice sculpting that they've done on the inside of it. It holds basically all the survival rations, supplies, and all the other things that they would need for their away missions, just in case they happen to be stranded. Looks like there's some medikits there, maybe some hypo sprays. It does close up, and this does fit in theory in his hand. I say in theory. Unfortunately, though, his hands are a little smaller in these newer releases. I'm going to bring back in, once again, the packaging. Maybe we won't do it as many times as we did with Captain Picard, but here's once again his field kit. This field kit worked better using the same mold because the original Riker had also larger hands. With the newer figures being proportionally sized, they also made the hands smaller, which also means when things like field kits, they're a lot harder to carry. And once again, we're just going to put that down for a second to open up the field kit. There we go. And just to show you, it does look like they are using the same mold. Well, let me just flip this around. They are using the same mold. Part of it, unfortunately, is covered by the card, something that doesn't come included with these figures, but it is looking like they are using the same molding on all of these. And they're using, in this case, not like Picard, who had the more darker teal. This is actually more of an aquamarine color. All of the accessories, except for really the hand phaser, are coming molded in that same color of plastic. Okay, let's move that out of the way. The next thing the figure comes also included with as well is a directional UV source. Basically, it's to use for visible light and heat. So again, if they're stranded in cold environments and they don't have a heat or light source, this basically comes in handy. It would have been, again, the same one package with the original figure. And unlike the field kit, this is something that holds a little bit better in Riker's hands. Granted, it does sit a little on the more looser side. You may even have to heat the hand up a little bit in hot water just to get that hand to be a little bit more of a grip. But you can see he does hold it in his hand. It's just a little on the more looser side. The figure also comes included. Let's put the figure back down here for a second. He comes with a tricorder. The tricorder isn't the same one, though, that came included with Picard. And while maybe they look like the same on the front, it's not until you actually flip them around that you'll notice the back of them are designed completely different. Picard's actually had slots on the back, with, I guess, the intended plan that the fingers would actually rest against those grooves. Where actually Riker's actually has a peg, a square peg, a very obvious peg. And the whole reason for that, if you look at the hand, the tricorder, you can either have him holding it this way, which sits a little loose, or, which you can also do, thank goodness I didn't drop that, you can also take the peg and fit it into his hand. So it looks like Riker is actually holding or palming the tricorder. With the way that the arms bend, unfortunately, you can't actually swivel them around. So he's actually facing it, but you can actually have him looking as if he's actually palming the tricorder in his hand. The other accessory the figure also comes included with, let's go ahead and pick it up, is another pad. Now, again, to bring back in, where's Picard's? Did I put Picard's over here? I think I did. Bringing back in Picard's. I mean, looking at them from the front and looking at on the back, it's only really by the back that you notice there's a slight difference between the two. I'm not really sure why they wouldn't have just kept the same mold the same. I mean, from the naked eye, if you're looking at it from the front, you would be suspecting, I would certainly suspect, that they are identical pieces. But again, when you look at that from the back, they've molded Riker's just a little bit different, putting a ledge there on the side. And again, it may be there just to help aid holding this in his hand, where you can actually take that little ledge of plastic and it kind of rests into his hand. Not great, but it does rest into his hand a little bit, I guess, reasoning why they probably put that in there. Or again, you can also just have him holding the pad like that. And maybe possibly why the reason why they put it in on this side is probably just because, again, like for this hand, for this side, that fingers probably would just do a little bit better job, yeah, like that, holding it just by having that little bit of ledged plastic added to the back of it. If not for that, they're identical to the same ones that came included with Picard's. The one last thing the figure also comes included with, unlike Picard, he actually gets himself a Type 2 hand phaser. The hand phaser, like though the one that came included with the Captain, here's Captain Picard's, here's Riker's. Both of them do have the emitted beam from the phaser coming out. None of them, by the way, are removable. I suppose you could, if you didn't want to commit to the idea of always having them fired, you probably could easily just cut these off. I don't know if I really want to do this because, again, like the original vintage toy, just once again bringing back in Riker's, his was also attached onto the end of the phaser. And I think I would almost like to even follow suit with that and keep the look the same. But again, like I guess if you wanted to, you could trim it off too. And once again, you can take then the hand phaser and just attach it inside his hand. And again, if you have it where it's a little too loose for your liking, just heat the hand a little bit with either hot water or a hairdryer. Let's move all now those accessories out of the way and get a closer look at Commander Riker. Now, again, I think they've done a really nice job on the figure. It doesn't have photorealism to it, but certainly when it comes to a retail-released Star Trek Riker, I think they've done a pretty good job on it. To bring back in the original Riker so you can see the difference, keeping again in mind that this is like the first season outfit, so it does have the stripe on the shoulder and minus the collar. The newer one does have the collar. It does still have the pips indicating his commander ranking, and it does have the comm badge still there on the side. The comm badge is nicely painted. It looks like in the original one they would have outlined it in black. It doesn't look like they've actually outlined it in the case of the newer release. Still, though, you get broad shoulders on Riker. There was also a battle damage version of Riker, which I still also have. Didn't decide to bring him out just because it was pretty much the same figure as this one. The only thing also that's missing outside of the trading card for Riker is he also does have a holster on the side of his leg. They didn't include a holster. They could have technically put a hole on the side of his leg. I know it would have been ugly to have a big honking hole there on the side there, but if they then put a hole there, they could also had a holster that could have attached to the leg or removed it depending on how you want to have the figure displayed. And again, we're going to bring back in Commander Riker's captain. Here's what he looks like with Captain Picard. Different bodies. It does look like perhaps they are using the same, I'm thinking, arms, and also looks like maybe they are using the same legs. Although Riker's looks a little thicker in the calf, maybe they are using the same legs and using the same arms. The torso, though, does seem different between the two. Possibly. It does maybe look like Riker's is just a little bit wider in the shoulders. Could, again, be just my eyes playing tricks on me. The figure does have all the same articulation as also Captain Picard, but just before we look at the articulation, here's the head sculpt on Commander Riker. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. I do like the darker color of his beard and his hair on the original release. This one kind of goes more of a medium brown, but I think the head sculpt is decent. It's certainly passable enough for a Riker. And certainly when it comes to the articulation on the figure, it's going to be the exact same as Captain Picard. So the head is on a ball joint, so you can rotate it all the way around. The head only does, again, look down that much. They're very more limited when it comes to moving the head up and down. You get a lot more mileage, though, when it comes to rotating the head all the way around. The head also does rock back and forth. If it's a little more concerned with the actions, the decisions of the captain, then you can have a more perplexed Riker. I don't think that's really a good idea, Captain. Sorry, what did you say, number one? Nothing. Commander Riker knows to choose his spots. His arms do rotate all the way around. They're on pin and hinge joints, so you can get a good, generous ball joint, hinge joint. Gives you about a 90-degree angle bend. And again, when it comes to the elbows have a single hinge, but at least that single hinge also allows the form to rotate back and forth. The hands also, again, rotate all the way around. I thought that they had swivels, but they have no swivels actually in their waist. The legs, however, though, do have a ball joint, so you can split the legs quite wide. And eventually, I don't know if we're ever going to be getting ourselves a bridge set, but they have the means to actually sit down. Or if you want to have like Riker seem to always like straddle things. You can also do that as well. The figure does also have a hinge in the knee, and that also allows the lower leg to rotate back and forth. And there's also articulation also in the feet. All around, not a bad looking figure at all. And one thing that's good about the newer line of figures too, is once again, we'll bring back in Picard, is that the newer figures not only have better articulation, but they also have better proportioned bodies. The older figures obviously did have the more retro designed bodies, so they were a little bit more stylized. Riker proportionally seems a little bit better. He's longer in the legs, first of all, which is one good thing. Also, some of the older Star Trek figures were sometimes pre-posed or bent in or molded in a certain way that they had the figures never always standing straight. With these newer figures, at least, you can have Riker standing straight, or again, you can have him straddling the seats on the bridge of the Enterprise if we ever get ourselves an Enterprise playset. Simply for nostalgia, I'm really glad to see that Playmates did use the same mold for the accessories that came packaged along with the ones that we got in the early 90s. Except, unfortunately, though, for the field kit. Unfortunately, with the field kit being the same one that we got before with the original Riker, that original Riker did have, after all, larger hands. So you're trying to use a larger field kit, one intended for larger hands, on a figure that has slightly smaller hands and even rubbery plastic hands as well. The field kit, unfortunately, just doesn't fit into Riker's hands, no matter how hard I try, because of the softer nature of the plastic that they use for the hands, and just by how small they are. I wish they had maybe shrunk down the size of the field kit, or maybe made at least the handle portion a little bit smaller and a little bit more comfortable for Riker to carry around with him. neither here nor there. I'm still going to be displaying this figure, I think, with the Type 2 hand phaser in his hand, which, unlike the field kit, does actually hold better in Riker's hands. It still has, of course, the extended beam. Something I suppose they could have included a secondary phaser if you didn't like the idea of having the beam, but because, again, it has the nostalgic look of the original accessories those figures had, I kind of like the idea, honestly, that they had the phaser still with the beam extended out from it. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Playmates Toys that did provide the sample of Commander Riker that we could have a look at in this review. Once again, these Star Trek figures are now hitting store shelves. They're even now in store shelves as we speak. So if you guys are interested and would like to track them down, I know it's track them down, but we're sticking with a Star Trek theme here. If you guys are interested to try to find these, they should be available right now in stores. If you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and do want to stick around for more Trek, Star Trek that is, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And while we have wrapped up things with Commander Riker, we will be looking at Lieutenant Commander Data in an upcoming video. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.